Hi there, it's Gabrielle Nicolay from SpeechKids, where we teach little kids to talk and help parents understand their little kids. And today we are going to talk to Jo Anne Matteo. Jo Anne, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
This is exciting because I have known you since I was a teenager. Let's be clear.
Yes, let's be clear.
But you also, and so now we are in the same profession, but tell the good people who you are and what you do.
Great. So yes, I'm Jo Anne Matteo, and I am a speech language pathologist by training. I'm from Connecticut originally, although I hail from sunny the west coast of Florida right now. But right out of graduate school, I worked in the Connecticut public schools for 21 years, 2 different districts. I worked as a speech pathologist in the first district, and then I went to a different district in Connecticut where I worked as a preschool speech pathologist, and then I started a preschool program in-house in district for students with significant special needs. I brought them back from out-of-district placements. And then I became a special ed administrator. So I was an assistant to the director of special ed and chaired a lot of our IEP meetings and staff supervision, and really did a lot of program development actually in Connecticut. Then probably a little over 19 years ago, I came to Pyramid Educational Consultants, and they're based out of Delaware, but we are the home of the Pyramid Approach to Education and the Picture Exchange Communication System. So I think a lot of people have heard of PECS, and that's the acronym. And with Pyramid Educational Consultants, prior to the pandemic, I did travel around the country doing PECS trainings, doing classroom consultations. I have consulted to the Chicago Public Schools, Shreveport, Louisiana, upstate New York, where I actually, after the staff has been trained, I go in and do consultation. The other thing that's interesting is I do consultation with a 20-year-old gentleman, and I work with him in his home, his school, and out in the community where he's working. So it doesn't matter. We just, use the pyramid wherever we are. And, but the consultation piece is huge.
So we're going to get into that in just a second, but there's like 2 things that we need to clear up. One is, isn't it bad to teach kids who might be verbal to communicate using a picture system?
Okay, great question. So we have a little flow chart on who is a candidate for PECS. So specifically with the students who have some speech, we have to take a look at, are they directing their message toward a communication partner? Because I could be looking over here saying, water, 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 and someone might bring me water because they heard it. But our definition of functional communication is me as the communicator needs to identify my communication partner before delivering the message. And in this case, we're using a speech example. So that's the first thing I would want to know, because if the student is not directing their message toward a communication partner, the PECS protocol can teach that. The second thing,
let me interrupt you for just a second, because this is actually the thing that I love about PECS, which is exactly what you're talking about. If I'm over here by myself, that's a completely different thing. And I know you'll get into this, but part of PECS is the exchange. It's like, I give you a message. And so whether or not that's printed or verbal, and I know you're getting to the next thing, but it doesn't matter. That exchange of ideas, of thoughts into words or print is the thing. But does it impede speech or not?
No.
So the thing everybody wants to know.
That's exactly, because I often hear that it's a crutch. So, what you were just explaining was the social approach. I have to get my communication partner's message to deliver, attention to deliver whatever kind of message we're talking about. So that's the first thing that I would ask. And then the second thing I would ask is the articulation understood by the untrained or the unfamiliar listener? Now, those of us, whether you're parents or whether you're professionals, we kind of live with the students, and we know their sound substitutions, their omissions, their deletions, anything that they may do, and we can figure out, because we have a history with that student and we know what they like, and we understand that is orange juice, but is the untrained, unfamiliar listener going to understand that? So if the answer is no to that, then PECS really does help with improving articulation. Now, to your question about does it, you know, impact speech development, would it inhibit speech development? There's enough research in the field of augmentative and alternative communication, which is known as AAC, that states that any alternative or augmentative communication system will actually enhance the development of speech if speech is going to develop. Now, I've worked in preschool a lot of my years, so the likelihood of developing speech is greater with my younger students, but I've worked with 2-year-olds that never went on to speak, and then I've worked with 2-year-olds that you would never even know had a speech and language, you know, issue. So I don't have the crystal ball. I don't know who will speak and who won't, but when I give them a way to communicate, I see less of those challenging behaviors, whatever you want to call them. We call them contextually inappropriate behaviors, but we do see a decrease in a lot of the behavior issues if the function of that behavior is related to the inability to communicate,
Right. And
because
that's
they
what we
can't be
see.
understood. Yeah.
Right. We see that so often. And I, particularly in my caseload too, because I'm dealing with kids who are usually 2 and under. They are very frustrated. And to your point, they're frustrated because
And they're
parents don't understand what they're saying, right? So they could be initiating all day long and nobody can understand if outside of the immediate context. And that's where I have frequently brought in, you know, a picture-based communication system. We usually try signs first because they're attached.
Right.
But once we get there, now I want to ask
you.
The
only issue, can I add something to that? The only issue I have with that is how large is the community of people? When we said we have to identify our audience, how large is the community of people who understand sign language?
Yep.
So I actually train at schools for the deaf because they're using PECS as the backup system. When people, if they don't have an interpreter with them, or they don't have any, you know, if they can't be understood with whatever signs they're using, it's kind of a nice backup as well. So
that's super interesting. Yeah, these are all to your point about not sort of having the crystal ball and knowing. Yeah, that is the question. Like, how far ahead are we looking? Right. As clinicians, right? Like, and as we're making recommendations to parents, how far ahead are we looking? What do we think is going to happen long term? If we don't know, are we covering our bases? Yeah, it's okay. So I want to ask you also about autism. Isn't PECS just for kids with autism?
That is a common question. It is a huge population that I work with. Okay, I've been a speech pathologist for a lot of years, and when I first started, I really had more students that looked like they had challenges with language. You know, I used to call them my regular speech and language kids. So they were cognitively intact, but they just had a little, you know, delay in their language skills. My population changed over the years, and then when I moved to that second district in Connecticut, I really was working with a more severe population of needs. So, and when I first started there, I had students using wheelchairs, I had students who were medically fragile, students with chromosomal abnormalities that, you know, were kind of rare at the time. Then my population did change to look like more students on the autism spectrum. Now, you know, it's a spectrum disorder, so there's different degrees of it, hence the puzzle piece, which is the, you know, no 2 puzzle pieces are alike, the autism symbol. So I think we were better at identifying students that were having issues with social communication and not speaking. So I think the last statistic I saw was about 40% of the students on the autism spectrum are not speaking or had speech and lost it. So it is a huge population that I work with, but I've done PECS with anyone that has a communication challenge. Okay, so going back to what we mentioned earlier, if the student isn't initiating communication, if they're not understood by the untrained and unfamiliar listener, no matter what modality it is, if they may only be speaking in single words and you want to increase the length of their spoken utterance, these can all be candidates for PECS. And teaching additional vocabulary and all of those good language skills. So it is not just for students on the autism spectrum. I've done PECS with students with Down syndrome, Angelman syndrome, Williams syndrome before she became, you know, a little chatty person, but she did not have vocal communication at 3 years old. Like I said, most of my time was in preschool. So huge population is are those people on the autism spectrum? But no,
Not everybody.
lots of.
I want to get into, we're going to do a teeny bit. I think we're going to have time for it, for like the mechanics of like what is involved in an exchange. But
Yes.
you were mentioning earlier, sort of PECS is not just about the exchange, right? There's this pyramid. So can you walk us through a little bit, like, what is that? What is the pyramid? How does it work? What is it?
Absolutely. So I love, this is the Pyramid Approach book. It's the second edition. And the reason why I like to point this out is the subtitle is A Guide to Functional ABA. So a lot of times people say, I want an ABA program, and I ask them to define that. ABA is the science of how we all learn, the foundation. So that's what the pyramid does as well, but it puts it in terms that we all understand. So Andy Bondi, the co-developer of PECS, he developed PECS along with Laurie Frost. He is a clinical psychologist, behavior analyst, and he always says to us, I'm not going to come into your site, whether it's school or home or the community, and build a pyramid for you. We're going to give you the blueprints to do that. So he often talks about, which is true, you can't put the top on a building until you have the foundation set. So this is what I consult around, and the foundation components of the pyramid are functional activities. Am I going to be teaching skills that are necessary for independence? Powerful reinforcers and reinforcement systems, kind of like our paychecks, right? What's going to be in it for the student? Mm-hmm. We look at functional communication, so we choose a primary modality for communication, and then we teach lots of other skills like help and wait and schedules and break and, again, skills that are necessary. What research has found is when those three components are in place, functional activities, powerful reinforcers, and functional communication, we do see fewer of what we call contextually inappropriate behaviors. So I usually tell my audiences when I'm doing a training, you will be writing less behavior plans. All behaviors will not go away, but you'll be able to identify the function of the behavior and teach what we call a functionally equivalent alternative behavior. Mm-hmm. And then the top of the pyramid is how we teach. Once we have that foundation set, now we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of a lesson plan. What are my generalization factors? Because I want my student communicating with everyone. What type of lesson is it? So for example, is it discrete or sequential? How am I going to teach that lesson? Very importantly, how am I going to error correct if the student makes a mistake? And then we kind of say the glue or the nails, if you will, or whatever that hold the whole pyramid together is data collection and analysis. So we make data-driven decisions. We analyze what the student is doing. If the lesson is not working, we go back to our pyramid and figure out what piece is missing. Because if you took one piece out of the pyramid, it would fall apart.
I'm going to add to this because this ABA and I have a long, lovely history together. Yeah. And I have a little bit of it's not a beef, but I have an addition.
Okay,
which
good.
And I think the reason that I have this addition is because I think it's obvious to people who are doing good ABA.
That's right.
But I think it's worth mentioning that the connection between the student and, in this case, the adult usually, but between people who are involved in this exchange has to be open. There has to be a firm attachment between, and trust and safety and all of those things that make us feel good in our skins, right? If we're going to do any of it. High reinforcement, be damned, right? Because yes, for some period of time, I'll do anything for a reinforcer that's powerful enough, but the most powerful reinforcer has to be ourselves, has to be the relationship. And if we're not moving toward that, right, we can throw all the tangibles we want out the window. Right. So I think you're nodding, and I see you nodding, right? Because that's obvious. And yet I think it's a component that gets forgotten. Because we're so interested in like, okay, what's the reinforcer? And people automatically think it's an M&M,
right? Or
it's a high five. It's not a high five. It's the intention and the energy and the attachment behind the high five, right?
And knowing and having a history with that person. We often talk about grandpa's secret within the pyramid because we like to put things in terms that people relate to. And, most of us love or still do love going to your grandparents' house because it was free reinforcement, right?
Yes.
So then you wanted to be around your grandmother, and then you wanted to do anything you could for your grandmother because you had that history of reinforcement to begin with. But behavior analysts call it pairing.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of what you're talking about. I call it just developing a relationship with the other person, so that especially when I'm working with my students, if I have to say no, or sorry, you can't have that, or you need to do this, they're more likely to accept that because of the relationship that we build. So you're
Yeah.
right. It goes hand in hand. And a lot of speech pathologists talk about joint attention. And what you were saying, whenever I deliver a message to a communication partner, the joint attention is built right in, and that social approach and that exchange is right there. So that's kind of nice, because then we don't have to teach some of those lessons that don't always work, like look at me, why do I have to look at you? It doesn't make any sense from the student's perspective.
Right. And then we're reinforcing with something that's not at all related to looking at me.
Exactly.
So there is,
Exactly.
I think, right. The point is well taken in terms of like, there's some ABA, there are various versions of ABA that are more or less functional. PECS in its probably entire history has been really functionally based. And that's why I like it.
Yeah, when we do these pyramid certified classrooms, we give like the one I'm doing in upstate New York, there's 5 preschool classrooms. They got the training that they needed. And then I go in once a month and we take a portion of this pyramid that I just told you, there's 9 components, and I take a portion of it and I want to see that in action. And it's a whole, program of what I look at and when I look at it. It is unbelievable to see the progress that they have made when they follow this pyramid. We just finished with a group in Memphis, Tennessee, and we were so proud of them. They, during this pandemic and everything, we were able to finish it. But it's just a different way of thinking. And then what we're the outcomes for our learners is they're working, they're living as independently as possible. And even if they never leave their family's home, they're still doing everything that they're supposed to do as contributing members to the family. So that's that's really exciting.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what
So,
the pyramid has done for me.
yeah. So
My
apropos of the
framework.
pandemic,
Yeah.
you guys have, Pyramid has created a lot of resources. And so I hope that you can just like sort of sketch those out for the people who might want to learn more.
I would love to. I just was wondering, did you want me to just mention what the 6 phases of PECS address?
Yes.
Okay, let's do that first.
Yep.
So at Pyramid, we teach 1 lesson at a time, and PECS has 6 phases. So the first phase, student does not even need to know the picture. All we're teaching is when I'm holding something you want, all you have to do is hand over this picture. So we actually refer to it as a ticket. So what we're teaching is you have to give to get. This is how you're going to ask. You don't have to kick me, punch me, grab at me, do any of that. All you need to do is hand over this picture. So very simple, just teaching a motor exchange. Phase 2, we introduce a communication book, and we want our students to be able to travel to the book, travel to the communication partner, and carry their voice with them all the time, because the students who are using PECS, that's their main modality for communication right now. Phase 3, we teach picture discrimination, and that's been a challenge for some of our students with cognitive components to their needs. So we have a way of teaching picture discrimination, and then there's a lot of myths out there actually about PECS, because the next phase, we teach sentence structure. So just handing over a picture of a ball is not enough, because me as your communication partner, I don't know if that one picture means I want a ball, I like the ball, she's playing with the ball. I don't really know. So we start to add these sentence starters. Then the part that I really love as a speech pathologist is we start to teach additional vocabulary like color, size, shape, number, body parts, because we can't have a picture for every noun in this world. And then we get the creativity on the part of our students where they're describing. And Nancy Neef out of Ohio State University did a research on improvisation. And it was interesting how people will describe things. Like I had a student who constructed, I want one big orange square cracker.
Oh.
You know what that is, right? It's a Cheez-It. And how quickly did he get it?
Yeah.
Immediately, because we didn't have to go through 20 questions.
I love it.
So we do teach additional vocabulary. We teach verbs, we teach pronouns, we teach prepositions. I just did the level 2 PECS training yesterday where I talk all about verb tenses and WH questions and all that good stuff. And then phase 5 of the protocol is just the student answering a question, because sometimes people will ask us questions. And then phase 6 is commenting. And that's where they're telling, we use different sentence starters for my name is, my birthday is, I like, I don't like, and even get into some of the emotions. So, so that's just the PECS protocol in a nutshell, because I think some people think it's just requesting and it's just requesting food. Obviously, some people start there because food is a primary reinforcer, but we do go beyond that as well.
Yep.
Thanks for letting me interject.
Yeah,
the
no.
pyramid of
Thank you for,
PECS.
right, exactly. Thank you for doing that. So,
Yeah, the support at home.
Support at home, because this is huge. Parents
Yeah.
are not getting very much intervention right now because schools are, nobody can figure quite out what to do.
Yeah.
So you guys have done actually quite a bit, sounds like, on your
We
website.
really have. As soon we jumped into helping mode because we are, you know, a helping, we're in special ed for a reason, right? We're helpers. And we jumped right into what we could do for the parents. So we developed a support at home page, which you have the whole link that you're going to share with everyone.
Yeah.
We have offices in 15 different countries, a couple of offices, maybe even in 2 other countries, but the PECSUSA.com website, there's a ton of information on it. And we have a support at home page. So what we immediately did, we jumped into action and we created videos of lessons that parents can do at home with materials that they have. I did one on making puffy sidewalk chalk. It was really fun. And I did another one on making Play-Doh, but my colleagues, I have a ton of creative colleagues at Pyramid, and you know, like English muffin pizzas. But the nice thing about it is there's a video for parents to watch. There's a lesson plan, which is good for the professionals when they're trying to target IEP objectives. And then there's a picture grid. If your students are using PECS, we created the picture grid. Now, we're not only targeting expressive communication, there's receptive communication objectives. If I give the oral direction, go get the spoon, can my child go get the spoon? We have waiting, opportunities for waiting, understanding wait, and being able to wait. So we really took a look at a comprehensive the activity and came up with a comprehensive list of objectives that could be developed. So all of those are on our website and we keep adding to them. The other thing I'd like to mention is Andy Bondi and Lori Frost wrote a book called Autism 24/7. And the subtitle is A Family Guide to Learning at Home and in the Community. This is free to everyone on our website, and the chapters are broken down really nicely, so you can, you know, just target a chapter that you might be interested in. And there's, you know, one on reinforcement systems and, you know, how to implement those as well. For my students who have no way to communicate and they're grabbing and kicking, even if parents didn't have pictures, I made this real simple, you know, Post-its. I can't draw very well, but, you know, just something to simulate the picture that I would use, but just to give that idea again, or teach that student that idea again, that you have to give something to get something that I'm holding. So I'm teaching them how to functionally communicate.
Fantastic.
It's exciting.
Okay, so while you've got that sheet, that little thing.
Yeah, my little makeshift.
Can we do like a tiny little demo before we sign off?
Sure. Do you have a water bottle in front of you?
I do not.
Okay, what do you have in front of you?
I have a phone, I have a pen, and I have some chapstick.
Okay, so you know what? I'm just quickly going to make another. So I'll draw a phone. As best I can. And I'll put phone on it. Okay, so the picture of the phone is in front of me. You're holding the phone. Actually, let me be the communicator. Let me hold the phone, and you have the picture. So even just get a Post-it or a piece of paper. No big deal.
Here is my phone icon.
Okay, beautiful. So you know nothing about that picture yet. So what do you think you're going to do when you see this phone? Beautiful. When you do that, I open my hand, and a second person standing behind you, because in the first phase we use a physical prompter, is going to help you pick up, reach, and release the picture into my open hand. I'm going to accept it, and I'm going to immediately give you the phone.
Yay!
So we do use 2 people in phase 1 because you see that I got to preserve myself as the communication partner. I didn't have to try to get your hand to give me the picture. Okay. Andy and Lori have done a pandemic exception though, because a lot of people do not have a second person. So what they're recommending is choose a prompt. So when you grab, if you can do that again, I would take your hand on the picture, help you pick it up, reach it, and release it into my open hand, and I would give you the phone. What we're being very, very cautious about is people need to know what prompt they use, and they need to eliminate it right away.
Yep.
So on the next trial, let me just show you that. When you grab for the phone, I'm going to put your hand on the phone picture. I'm going to help you pick it up, reach it, and then I'm going to back off, and you're going to do the release on your own.
Got it.
So I want to make sure that, I mean, in a perfect world, and this is the only place where I'm a little rigid in the PECS protocol, is you need 2 people just to teach initiation.
Yep.
But we realize what's going on right now, and parents, if you can get a sibling to help, because all the communication partner needs to do is hold the item, don't say anything. As soon as you grab, I open my hand, second person helps the student give me the picture, and I give the item.
Yep.
So.
And then it's so interesting because that whole exchange that we were just doing, completely nonverbal. Now, obviously, as you hand the phone to me, you're going to say phone. Okay, there's all of that stuff.
And then I can talk after. I can say whatever I want. But while I'm enticing, you're absolutely right. Not saying anything.
Right. And this is, anyway, we could stay here all day.
We really could. We really could.
This, I think the takeaways are, number 1, pictures and that exchange. Number 2, the hierarchy, like knowing what you're doing, prompting and fading, because so often we think kids have a skill and we say, oh yeah, they can totally do that. Well, they can totally do that when we're like showing them exactly what to do and I have asked them 3 times to get the thing and do all the thing. So I think that's real, like that has always been what I've loved about PECS, is like, it's very, very clear about.
And it's behaviorally based, and it's research based on all of the research comes from the field of behavior analysis and speech language pathology, how we all develop communication, speech, and language. And I think it's so effective. And we have a whole research link on our website as well because of the protocol. It is an evidence-based protocol. I don't say that PECS is evidence-based. I say the protocol is. So people say, lots of people that come to PECS training say exactly what you do. I didn't realize it was so systematic and so organized, and it's not hard to implement when you implement it with fidelity. In fact, in the PECS manual, we do have an implementer's checklist, because when I see PECS fail, it's usually because people are not doing it with fidelity.
Yep. All right, we're going to pin it there. Thank you so much. All the resources we talked about are going to be in the notes for this podcast. Take care,
Thanks
Jo
for
Anne.
having me. So great to see you.
You too.